NASCAR Coast to Coast coming at you this Thursday, October the 21st. A big show for you, including a special guest this week, Rodney Childers, joining the show to talk about his new opportunity at Junior Motorsports, but also a look back at an amazing run with Landon Lewis in the Cars Tour Championship. We talk about Keelan Harvick and his run of Pro Late Model wins and a whole lot more. That's coming up with Rodney Childers. Plus, we had championships crowned at North Wilkesboro. We'll recap everything that happened over there, plus our conversation with Ben Kennedy on a new showcase opportunity that happened over the weekend with his short track program. All that plus the NASCAR Racing calendar is all next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, and it all starts right now. Welcome to NASCAR Coast to Coast this October the 21st, 2025. Your host, as always, Chris Wilner, MRN Pit Reporter, and we'll kick things off this week with our special guest, championship-winning crew chief, now over at Junior Motorsports, getting ready for his venture next year in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Boy, that's going to be difficult to remember. That is Rodney Childers. Rodney, congratulations on the early start to the year. We were just talking, we're a little bit different trajectory plans. We're ready to slow things down, but you just had your first day at school on Monday. How are things going over there at Junior Motorsports?
Yeah, it's going really well so far. Yeah, like you said, I mean, everybody else is ready for a break, and I've had enough break. I'm ready to go. So it's going to be a little bit odd for me, over the next couple months as everybody kind of spends their time with their families and Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything else. Where I've been at home a lot over the past 6 months and ready to get going.
What are the first couple of days like, Rodney? Even someone like you with so much experience, but a new venue or a new organization, a new shop, kind of getting the ins and outs worked out. But what kind of do these first few weeks look like for you?
Really, for me, it's just been a lot of walking around, meeting people, talking to people, getting different people's opinions, asking lots and lots of questions. Looking at the cars, the details, taking notes of little tiny things that maybe could be better, and just trying to take it all in. And also, there's a lot going on here in the next 2 weeks. We got 2 cars in the Final Four racing for a championship. So I spent a lot of time with the guys and going to lunch with Marty Lindley every day and just kind of, figuring it out one day at a time. But it's definitely a busy time here inside these walls.
Will you make the trip up to Martinsville this weekend and then Phoenix as a kind of a support role, or what does your role look like, at least for 2025, in assisting those teams?
Yeah, I really wanted to go to the last couple races, and we went ahead and asked NASCAR's permission, actually. And, there's pretty strict rules right now on the roster limits and different things, but they ended up saying I could come up to Martinsville and just watch the cars go through tech and at least learn the process in the Xfinity Series and how that works. And but I can't be there during the race, and I can't go to Phoenix. So, but I'll at least get to go up there Friday and kind of see what the Xfinity garage does and how that process is going through tech and all those things. So that'd be good to at least be able to see that for 1 week.
Well, before we look at the outlook to 2026, let's talk about your short track ventures over the last several months here in 2025. After leaving Spire, you've been hot and heavy on the Cars Tour train with Landon Lewis, who, of course, captured the championship with KHI this past weekend at North Wilkesboro Speedway. What have the last few months been like for you, kind of taking a step back out of the Cup Series garage and going back short track racing and teaming up with not only KHI but Landon and being a part of that championship run?
Yeah, for sure. Kevin's just done so much for me in my life, and it means a ton to me. Him and Delana, all those guys and gals. So, when Kevin asked me to kind of step in and to go with them to the racetrack, every now and then if I could, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I knew, my old shop guy was the crew chief on the car, Miles, and I've always loved Miles to death, and I was excited about working with him. And honestly, after that first week, I just really loved working with Landon. He's such a good kid. He works extremely hard, and there's so much that the public really don't know about him. I mean, he's just an hard worker and deserves everything that he gets. And once I went to a race or two, I just wanted to finish it out with them, and I wanted to see him win the championship and win as many races as he could. And we won 4 of them, but we had a shot at winning a lot more than that, and it didn't close them out. But it would have been awesome to win 6 or 7 and win the championship. But just a lot of fun to hang out with them. It was awesome to see the smiles on Kevin's face the other night. I know he was disappointed when he blew up in the pro race, but to see the way that Keelan raced the rest of the night, and to get the win in the pro race with Keelan, and then to turn around and watch Landon win the championship was just an awesome weekend.
Oftentimes, different people in the sport, if they take a step back and go do something like go short track racing, it kind of ignites a new fire underneath them when they come back on the NASCAR circuit. Could that be the same said for you? As I remember seeing you around the garage area several times this year, walking around. Oh, okay, we're going to go to the short track, or we got to go to Tri-County or wherever it was with the Cars Tour stuff. But how much did this kind of little break ignite a new fire in you as you now step up at JRM?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And, honestly, I truly don't feel like I would have ended up at JRM unless I would have been at those Cars Tour races. And, we were at Florence a while back, and Dale ran the race, and he was hanging out with us after the race. And it was really just right after Florence, he called. He's like, "Do you really not have something for next year? Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And he goes, "Well, we need to talk." So, without being there, I don't know if this would have happened, even on this side. So just extremely fortunate. And then the other side of it is, what's the odds of going and working on the Cars Tour stuff, which was, the old cars that are old truck arm cars, and normal spindles and all that kind of stuff, and then turn around and have a job in the Xfinity Series, which is almost just like the exact same frames and suspension that are on the Cars Tour stuff. So, it's crazy how it has all played out. Dale and I have always wanted to work together basically ever since high school, and we just never have had the opportunity. So it'd be fun to be around each other and to have him on the box with me, and to see some smiles, from my side and from his side.
That kind of led to my next question. What are some of the similarities? What have you learned in the Cars Tour working with the old car and like you said, the truck arm and things like that kind of helped the transition to these Xfinity Series machines?
Yeah, I mean, really, just the more I was over at KHI every day, that, it just more and more things just kept coming to mind, like all the things, over all the years that you've learned. And then as I've been here just a couple of days, just, working with the sim and stuff like that. And it's like the more runs I make, the more stuff I remember. And, obviously we were, extremely successful with Kevin and with SHR. And, I just learned so much from so many people throughout the years, starting out with Kenny Francis and then going to MWR. We had so many good people at MWR. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And just a little bit at a time has made a big difference. And, for me here, I have to figure out, like, what does that look like? Xfinity racing, Xfinity racing is obviously going to be different. You don't have an unlimited budget. You don't have, some of the things and perks that you have on the Cup side, but on the other side of it, you still have all the things you've learned for 25 years. So hopefully, we can go out there next year and win some races and do a good job.
I was going to say, are you excited? Because we know that the landscape of Cup Series racing now, there's not much you can do on the engineering side anymore. Are you excited to be able to get your hands dirty a little more with these Xfinity machines and have that element to kind of tweak on things more so than you could on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, everything has changed a lot over the years. I grew up as a racer and working on the cars and then was a car chief and then, turned crew chief. And that's really what I see over here, out of Jim Pullman, out of Marty Lindley. You know, I've seen Jim work his butt off the last 2 days. Like he works on the cars more than about any car chief you've ever seen. So, that'd be fun for me is to be able to work on the cars and hit those details and do all that kind of stuff. And, it might take me a little bit to figure out what those details are unless somebody gives me a good list to go off of in the beginning. But, I think it's going to be a lot of fun for me and just a tight knit family over here and a bunch of racers that want to win.
Absolutely. We talked about Landon and his championship, but what's it been like watching Keelan just blossom into the race car driver he is? Literally wins in everything he steps foot in, including there at North Wilkesboro. But do you kind of see shades of Kevin a little bit in him? It wasn't too long that Keelan was just running around the playground at some of these driver owner lots, and now here he is winning pro late model races left and right.
Yeah, he's doing such a good job. I was fortunate enough to be there at GoPro Motorplex, or now they call it Trackhouse Motorplex.
Yeah.
The very first time he ever rode a go-kart. Kevin sent me that picture not too long ago, just reminiscing in a way that, that particular day, we didn't know where it was going to go, right? I mean, it could have went good. It could have went bad. He could have just said that he didn't want anything to do with it. And, he's just a super smart kid. And, there's times that, he gets a mouthful and from Kevin, but, he's learning from the best every single day.
Sure.
The way that he goes about his days. I mean, Kevin makes him get up every single morning and go for a run before he goes to school. Just, just the discipline that Kevin's always had his whole life, and his intensity and the way he goes about things is just second to none. So, it's been neat to watch them do this year because, Kevin racing against him, he sees little things like, most of the time, Keelan's faster and Kevin's behind him, and Kevin gets to watch him a lot. So, he can help him with every little thing. Like, why did you take so long in passing this guy? And you should have done this. You should have done that. And then on the other side of it, we all make mistakes. On the West Coast last week, he made a mistake passing the lap car, and you could tell right off the get go he knew that he screwed up and he needed to own it, and went and checked on the guy and all that kind of stuff. But he's going to be absolutely incredible. He really is. And, I can't wait to see all that happen over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a deal being put in place? Are you going to crew chief Keelan when he makes it to NASCAR? Have we already had those discussions yet?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like people are already starting to talk, even at 13 years old. So, it's hard to say which route. There's a few different routes that he could go, and I think he's got the best person figuring that out for him, and hopefully they can get that figured out. And I would love to do that. I want to win, some Xfinity races here. I want to win, an owner's championship or a driver's championship or whatever, during my span here. And, if that happens, I think that puts a whole different spin on things, because if you've got a cup championship and you got an Xfinity championship, then you got one more to go, and that's to go win a truck championship.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's ever done that. So, to be the first one that does that would be pretty special.
Well, what does the outlook look like for 2026? You've got two really good race car drivers in that one car next year between Carson and Connor. Obviously, both coming from two different worlds. You probably relate more to Carson and been able to see what he's been able to do in a late model stock, and of course have a great rookie year this year. And then you've got Connor, who's been breaking records left and right. So how excited are you to work with both of those drivers next year? And you're probably just itching to get to the racetrack with either of them.
Yeah, I'm super excited about both, and I look at both of them as, they both can win races. I've seen what Carson's been able to do really his whole life, from racing at Millbridge, where I ran my first race as a kid, to, racing at Hickory and racing the Cars Tour. What he's been able to do in the Xfinity Series in his short time that he's been there. And then, on Connor's side, I mean, Lord, I've known Connor since he was much younger. At one point he was even signed under KHI and was coming to some of the Cup races and sitting on our pit box with us and different things. So, I've known both of them a long time. I've known, Travis and his family. Travis was getting in the 77 car right when I was leaving, when I was car chief in it. So, we've all known each other for a long time and have a lot of respect for each other. And, I think I'm sure Carson's a little disappointed not to run all of them. And I think the public has, been pretty clear that they don't want that to happen. But, the goal is to go out there and win races and to prove that he can win races and to be back full time. And if anybody believes that, it's me. And we're going to do everything we can do to get him in victory lane and to show the world that he deserves to be here.
Well, Rodney, before we let you go, I'd be remiss to not bring in this conversation, since I know you've been paying attention closely to the Cup Series. And as we go to Martinsville this weekend, we've got drivers needing to win to get in. We've got a new left side tire. I'm sure you've paid attention to that. So give me your, analyst cap. What do you think's going to happen at Martinsville? Who do you like in your championship for?
Yeah, I mean, I really, it just depends on, if the track ends up taking rubber. I think the goal with the left side tire was to soften it up even more. And if they get it to the point to where it's pilling, it's going to turn into a whole different race. If it's warm enough to put some rubber down and it doesn't peel, then it's going to kind of look the same as it's been looking. Obviously Blaney's been really strong there the last couple of years in the fall race. And then you have all the norms. I think Willie B will be extremely fast this weekend. I think he'll have a shot, but you really just don't know. I mean, it seems like, every time you go, somebody might hit on something a little different. And Martinsville's an extremely hard place to just shoot from the hip and kind of, go with a different setup that might be better, because it might just be horrible. And the simulator is really hard to work with at Martinsville. It's just so much torque and shifting gears and spinning the tires and all. The simulator's hard. So it'll be interesting to see if somebody hits on something new or different and, puts a whooping on them or whatever. But I think it'll look a lot like what it's been looking like.
Well, Rodney, appreciate your time. Always good talking to you. Best of luck in your first few weeks there at JRM. Looking forward to catching up with you at the racetrack here, not before too long.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Rodney Childers joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast as we get set for the final two races of the 2025 season. Of course, a lot going on in 2026. Coming up next, a conversation with Ben Kennedy about the Nexus Showcase this past weekend and a whole lot more. Stay tuned to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network.
3, 2, 1, start your engine!
The NASCAR channel is streaming now, exclusively on Tubi.
Tell them we got it!
Go deeper into NASCAR with 24/7 news, documentaries, and explore the vault of timeless NASCAR stories and unforgettable races. From crushing defeats to the thrill of victory.
Go, baby!
The NASCAR channel, always on, always free. Only on Tubi.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on MRN. Appreciate Rodney Childers for joining us on the show. Excited to see what he and the one car can do over at JRM with those two drivers starting next year. And that'll be sooner rather than later, because we're already at the end of October and Daytona is right around the corner. Well, he mentioned Keelan Harvick, one of a couple of drivers that got wins over the weekend at North Wilkesboro Speedway, as we wrapped up 3 different championships, 2 for the ZMAX Cars Tour, and of course 1 for the Smart Modified Tour. We'll start with the Pro Late Models in the Cars Tour, as Keelan was able to get the win in the KHI number 62, but it was Ben Mayer getting his first championship in the ZMAX Cars Tour, taking that title, with Luke Baldwin, who was doing double duty over the weekend as well. He secured Rick Ware Racing its Pro Late Model Owners Championship for 2025. Of course, also with the Late Model Stock Tour, you heard it with Landon Lewis getting the championship. But how about JRM and Caden Quapple, the younger brother of Carson Quapple, who's running for JRM in the Xfinity Series? He claimed the checkered flag in the Late Model Stock Division in their season finale. But of course, Landon Lewis, 4 wins on the season. gets his Cars Tour championship, and what a moment for KHI, getting not only the race win on the Pro Late Model side, but getting the championship, of course, with Landon. So congratulations to Landon and that team. Getting it done over Connor Hall gave him a valiant run for his money there at the end of that race. And then, of course, kind of buttoned in the middle was the Smart Modified Tour Smart 3 Playoff Championship finale. We started with 5 drivers. We ended up with 3 going for the title over the weekend. And it was Luke Baldwin securing back-to-back championships in the Smart Tour after going to Victory Lane and riding the lift there at North Wilkesboro Speedway. He was close with the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour back in May, but he was able to get it done with the Smart Tour at North Wilkesboro Speedway. A busy driver Luke Baldwin is, because of course he'll be right back at it coming up this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. Some other winners over the weekend. A big congratulations to GJ Shaw. Kind of was an unusual win over there with the Pass 400 Pro All-Star Series at Oxford Plains. It came in the version of a post-race technical infraction. Austin Terrace was crowned the winner of the 3-segment $75,000 to win race, but machined heads were on the motor were a lot more than the allowable tolerance, I should say, that the officials found for the Pro All-Star Series in the tech shed. So they did disqualify him post-race, and Shaw was declared not only the segment 3 winner, but the overall champion and $75,000 richer. So DJ Shaw adding another moniker to his illustrious career in late model racing. All right, I mentioned at the top of the show, we had a conversation with Ben Kennedy, and this was pretty cool. Over the week, last week, going into Talladega weekend, his Nexus Racing team, which was formerly Ben Kennedy Racing, with Spencer Davis running their Pro Late Model, had an opportunity for a small showcase to invite 5 different drivers from the Brazil series to come try their hands here in America at a Pro Late Model. I talked to Ben over the weekend at Talladega, and here's our conversation not only about that, but the possibility of maybe racing in Brazil. Take a listen. Ben, first off, let's talk about Nexus and the showcase happening this week. I know we just had Tri-County. You had some pretty awesome race car drivers, 5 of them join us to try a Pro Late Model. First off, where did this idea come from to partner with NASCAR Brazil and have this showcase to, expose some drivers to maybe Pro Late Model racing?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for us, a great opportunity for the drivers as well. So Nexus is a team that I had founded about 15 years ago, and it originally was Mark Martin Performance, eventually turned it into Ben Kennedy Racing, and then about a month ago around the Daytona race, we announced that we were transitioning over to Nexus Racing. So it's a race team that I've had for forever, really, and I love, and we've had a number of drivers that have come through it, and recently partnered up with Surf Mobile. They're based out of Brazil, a huge telecommunications company that is now expanding in the United States, and NASCAR Brazil to create our own version of a combine. So, we selected 5 different drivers that compete in our NASCAR Brazil series. We had them come up to Tri-County Speedway this past weekend and have them take their turn at a wheel in a Pro Late Model for the first time and on an oval for the first time for a lot of them. And a really great day overall. We had Spencer Davis out there, who is our house driver. He's put 6 wins on the board so far this year. He's crushing it for us. And he was with the drivers, training them throughout the day. And then we also collected a lot of data and telemetry so they could actually get out of the car, sit down with Spencer, sit down with our crew chief, and really understand all the inputs they're putting in the car, how they can find more speed around the track. And ultimately, it was a great day for us. So had a great day out there. And then they're going to be taking a tour of Charlotte this week. They're in Talladega this weekend. So excited to be hanging out with them here as well.
Obviously, like you mentioned, you've been a part of short track racing with this team for quite some time, but why this program and why the outreach to kind of have this driver development program?
Yeah, it's, I've always wanted this team to be able to create a pipeline for the future drivers of our sport. I felt like if I'm not going to be behind the wheel and I'm not going to be in the day-to-day of operating the race team, there's got to be a bigger purpose behind it. And for me, I'm all about the future. I'm all about the next generation. And I think it's really important for us to create opportunities for drivers that frankly may not have other opportunities or resources to be able to compete at that level. And I think that's what we're really trying to accomplish at Nexus Racing, is take partners like Surf Mobile as an example, or ADA Elevators, to bring them on board and give drivers like these Brazil drivers an opportunity to come to the United States, get behind the wheel of a car, hopefully find success off the track. We also want to do some media training behind the scenes so that we can can set them up for success off the track as well, but give them a platform and an opportunity to be successful in the late model division, because that is a jumping off point for a lot of these drivers that are successful in the International Series. And then hopefully give them a platform that they can level up to ARCA, the Craftsman Truck Series, maybe the Xfinity Series at some point. But for me, it's really to create a pipeline to the future drivers of our sport.
And of course, we've seen that with NASCAR Mexico and some of their drivers coming over to run ARCA and things like that. So I'd be remiss to ask, how close are we to possibly racing the Cup Series here in Brazil in the near future?
I don't know. It's a good question. We've talked to a lot of folks internationally and globally, and would love to bring the NASCAR Cup Series and all three of our national series outside of our border again. We had a great event in Mexico earlier this year, a ton of new fans that came to the event, a lot of people from Mexico, a lot of people that traveled from the United States, and they got to see an amazing show. So won't be going back next year. We've left the door open to be able to come back to Mexico in the future, as well as Canada and then overseas. So time will tell.
Great conversation with Ben Kennedy. A lot to digest there as we look ahead to the potential of what Nexus has in the coming years. Coming up this weekend as we wrap up Coast to Coast with the calendar, one big race, really big race to keep an eye on. Of course, the Motor Racing Network will be there. It's just up the road in Martinsville, Virginia for the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. Their championship finale. Virginia is for Racing Lovers 200 coming up on Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And you can listen to that right here on MRN. Austin Beers takes a 14-point lead into the championship over Justin Bonsignor. A lot of different things at stake. Of course, Austin Beers not only trying to win his first Whelen Modified Tour championship, but also surpass Ryan Preece as the youngest Tour champion by a few months. Austin, of course, 22 years of age, trying to get that done. But on the other side, Justin Bonsignor, who, of course, is the defending winner of this race, trying to go for title number 5, 2 in a row, and that would put him in elusive company, tying Tony Hirschman for third most championships in Tour history, just adding to the list of accomplishments for Justin Bonsignor. But he has some work to do because Austin can really finish 8th or better, and no matter what Justin does, he will be the champion of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. So Justin Bonsignor needs to make sure not only does he win the race or finish ahead of Austin, but he needs to ensure Austin is outside of the top 8. So we'll see what happens coming up on Friday or on Thursday night. 200 laps around Martinsville. It's going to be action-packed. Certainly a lot of drama. A stacked entry list as well, as not only do you have those two battling for the championship, Luke Baldwin, fresh off that Smart Modified Tour title, is in action as well at Martinsville. Also, Bobby Labonte, NASCAR Hall of Famer and Cup champion, is back in the fray. Ryan Newman running the Tim Connolly Mystic Missile is back, and a whole lot more, including your Tour regulars in Tyler Ripkema. Also, Patrick Emmerling slated to start in a modified as well. So a lot of heavy hitters. Everyone wants the grandfather clock, and of course that you can listen right on MRN, 7:30 p.m. Thursday night. Yours truly, Alex Hayden, Kyle Rickey, and Dave Moody will be on the call for that one coming up on Thursday to kick off NASCAR weekend. By the way, there are another 2 short track races on the calendar to make note of. The World Crown 300, one of the crown jewels, coming up at Cordele Motor Speedway on Saturday. This is a huge one. Big entry list, certainly one of the final crown jewels when you look at maybe what's left, which is going to be our All-American 400 coming up in November at Nashville Fairgrounds. And then, of course, the Snowball Derby and the Snowflake 100 in December. So World Crown 300 gaining a lot of traction. You can watch that on Saturday on Racing America. And then the Cars Tour West, they're still digging in 2025 with their race at Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway late on Saturday for those of us on the East Coast. Now, speaking of the Motor Racing Network, mentioned the Modified Tour kicks us off for a busy weekend of racing in our final race for the round of 8 for NASCAR's Top 3 Series. Again, that begins Thursday for the Modified Tour at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Friday, we get a little double dip, the Slim Jim 200. On Friday, yes, we have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series round of 8 finale. We'll see who makes the championship for there. A double dip on Saturday, actually, in fact, with Cup Series pole qualifying and practice coming up at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Saturday afternoon. Immediately following that, little night action for the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the IAA and Ritchie Bros 200 or 250. That is their cutoff race as well for the championship 4. And then it all leads into Sunday. Martinsville Speedway, the place to be. NASCAR Live Race Day gets you set for the Xfinity 500, 1 o'clock Eastern on MRN. So looking forward to seeing who punches championship 4 tickets as we get set for championship weekend next week out in the desert in Phoenix. Appreciate Rodney Childers and Ben Kennedy for joining us on the show this week. As always, my name is Chris Wilner. For our producer, Pat Jaggers, and everybody at MRN, we appreciate you for tuning in to NASCAR Coast to Coast this week. Got a couple more to go to wrap up 2025. We'll break all things short track racing and Martinsville down next week. Have a great weekend.